2020 saw an explosion of entrepreneurship. In fact, census.org shows that there were 4.4 million new business applications in 2020, which is a 27% increase over 2019. What that number doesn't represent are all the side hustles that launched that year as well. Needless to say, there are millions of new brands and businesses looking to gain your attention and win your business. For most startups, the first thing we think about when it comes to marketing our brands is Facebook ads. I mean, they are the powerhouse when it comes to the ability to market your product or service to the exact person you want to be in front of. The downside of Facebook ads is that it's such a powerful tool that many startups stop thinking outside the box when it comes to brand positioning. Well, not to state the obvious, but Facebook ads is a relatively new resource for businesses, and there were millions, if not tens of millions of businesses that had to gain buyer attention long before Facebook ads was ever even around. That is the discussion we have today with the founder of a global multi-million-dollar water brand. So let's jump in. Hello, I'm James McKinney, the creator and host of the Startup Story podcast and founder of the newest entrepreneurial subscription, Grindology. Every week, I sit with a successful founder to unpack their entrepreneurial journey that led them to build the incredible businesses and brands that they have. With over 100 episodes and almost 100,000 listeners across the UK, Australia, and the United States, we have been fortunate to have some of the most amazing founders join the show. And just recently, I had the chance to speak with Kara Goldin, the founder and CEO of Hintwater, as well as author of the book Undaunted, Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. For those that may not be aware of Hintwater, Hint is an unsweetened flavored beverage. In fact, when Kara launched Hint, she actually launched a brand new category. Prior to Hint, there was no unsweetened flavored water beverage out there. Everything had chemicals and sweeteners. Today, Hintwater is the category market leader. But she launched Hint long before Facebook ads was a thing. When we were recording her episode of the Startup Story, we started talking about the early tactics she used to get her brand out there when cash was lean and our current go-to resources didn't exist. As we were talking, I knew this segment would be of significant value to you because startup founders need to start thinking differently about reaching their ideal customers. We get so landlocked in how do we reach the masses, and we've stopped thinking about how do we reach the passionate. How do we reach those who will become evangelists for our brand? Well, Kara's entire episode is rich with insight, so make sure to click the link below and hear the entire episode. In fact, this segment is only 4 minutes of a 12-minute segment of her sharing her tactics and strategies with us, so you're definitely going to want to queue up the Startup Story podcast in your podcast platform of choice. She even talks about how during an interview with Google, she pitches placing Hintwater in the employee cafe. Like I said, she brings some out-of-the-box thinking to us in her full episode. And speaking of brand awareness, I highly encourage you to watch this video to the very end, as I have a special offer to highlight your business or brand within the Startup Story for absolutely free. All right, enough of this setup. Let's hear direct from Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hintwater, on how she developed brand awareness without leveraging Facebook ads.
I mean, this is pre-Facebook days, right? And we didn't have any money. I mean, I was self-funding the company, and so I certainly wouldn't have had money for Facebook ads, but I also didn't have money for billboards. Also coming from an advertising world, at CNN in particular, I knew I had an understanding of reach and frequency. So I thought that it was kind of a waste of money if I didn't have a lot of money to go and buy a lot of billboards, because maybe somebody wouldn't be driving down the street where I had that like one little billboard or whatever. And so I remember one day we got a phone call from an event. So it ends up something else I didn't know prior to launching Hint, but it ends up that if you are doing an event in a major city and you have more than, slightly varies, but if you have more than 100 people at your event, it's mandatory, um, it- basically scheduled by the city, that you have to have water for people who are participating in your events. So people would know that we were a water company and they'd reach out and ask us for a donation. And so we started getting these phone calls and I think one day I just thought, "Oh, well they buy our product, they're a customer, so why not? We'll give them a few cases of hint." So then I started hearing from more customers. They'd say, "Well, why aren't you in such and such store? I just had the product at this event." And so what I realized is it was a great way for people to actually try our product just by doing these events. And so I had to find more of those events. So in addition to sort of taking inbound calls, I was also looking for events where I thought people were looking for health and were, needing water. And so we would go to these events and almost immediately we would hear back from people. The thing that I thought was so interesting early on was that we would do events that were all around health, but health varies so much. Like we would have events where people were, uh, Autism Speaks was like a really big event and that we did and gave away a bunch of water. But then there was breast cancer. And so the people who had attended those events for either one of those, they felt that Hint had a connection to something that they cared about. And so it was a very, very powerful lesson around community and finding, I guess you call it finding your tribe, right? And most of the time, these customers, they're at an event where they're going to spend their afternoon, their most valuable thing, their time, and they're looking around. No longer were we competing with all of the brands on the shelf at the local retail store because we were a product as long as we tasted great and we were, showing up at their event that they cared about. And so I mean, we built our strategy. I mean, we call it field marketing, event marketing. We built our marketing and our brand there first. And so, I think it's fascinating. Maybe it's easier to do that with a food or drink, right? Where you're doing that. But I think that there's other ways for companies to do that, to sort of partner. I call it borrowing equity, right? From another brand. And but again, like super unintentional. I mean, it was not sort of what I was looking to do but I realized that so many of our customers, because we weren't doing advertising, they were they were not only buying our product, but they were also going into stores and filling out those little sheets saying, hey, stock this product in the stores.
I hope you found this content helpful. And if you did, then please make sure to subscribe to the Startup Story podcast on your podcast platform of choice so that you can hear Kara's episode in its entirety. With over 100 founder interviews to choose from, I am confident you will find many that will be helpful to your entrepreneurial journey. I mentioned earlier that I have a special offer for you to promote your business within the Startup Story podcast, and it's absolutely free, and it's true. This offer requires nothing from you except your time. In every episode of Startup Story, I read a listener review from Apple Podcasts. If you visit the Startup Story show page within Apple Podcasts and leave a written review, I will read it in an upcoming episode. And here's the best part. If you insert your URL, social media accounts, or company name within that review, then when I read your review in an episode of the Startup Story, your brand or URL will be inserted into the Startup Story and live on for years to come. It's basically a free advertisement for your business or brand within the Startup Story. I hope you'll subscribe to the show as well as follow us on all the many social media platforms. I say it in every episode because I believe it. Entrepreneurs support other entrepreneurs, and we're here to support you.